Everyone, please rise as I invite firefighter Regina Wilson to sing the national anthem.
Detail, hand salute.
Oh, say can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Ready, two.
Everybody, please remain standing for the invocation by FDNY Chaplain Reverend Ann Cansfield.
Detail, uncover.
Trip Zanetis was an atheist, a very spiritual atheist. And as a member of this department, he stood silently and respectfully through countless invocations. And so, as we come to remember and to give thanks for him, I invite us now to stand silently and respectfully. Amen.
Detail, Rico.
Will everyone please be seated?
Detail at ease.
Good morning. My name is Captain Brian Lynch of Engine 28, and I want to thank everyone for coming to today's plaque dedication ceremony honoring our fallen member, Christopher Trip Zanetis, lost to us on March 15th of 2018. I would now like to introduce the members of our dais. Mayor Bill de Blasio. Fire Commissioner Daniel Nigro. Chief of Department John Sudnick. First Deputy Commissioner Laura Kavanaugh. Please hold your applause until I finish announcing the remaining members of the dais. Chief of Staff Elizabeth Casio. Chief of Fire Operations Thomas Richardson. Chief Fire Marshal Thomas Kane. Assistant Chief John Hodgins. Assistant Chief of EMS Operations Fred Villani. Deputy Manhattan Borough Commander Michael Galla. Deputy Assistant Chief of Operations Richard Blattis. Deputy Assistant Chief of Operations Christopher Boyle. Assistant Chief Fire Marshal Michael Durkin. Deputy Assistant Chief of Fire Prevention Joseph Jardine. Chief of Counterterrorism and Preparedness Thomas Correo. Chief of EMS Academy, Lillian Bonsignore. Chief of the Fire Academy, Stephen Sullivan. Division I Commander, Robert Carroll. Assistant Commissioner, Evelyn Tesoriero. Battalion 4 Commander, John Spillane. Captain of Ladder 11, Charlie Van Rossum. FDNY Chaplain, Reverend Ann Cansfield. President of the Uniform Fire Association, Gerard Fitzgerald. President of the Uniform Fire Office Association, Jake Lamunda. UFA Fire Marshal Representative, James Egan. UFA Manhattan Trustee, Vincent Speciale. We'd also like to give a warm welcome to Gene Andrew Jarrett, Dean of NYU's College of Arts and Science, and his wife, Dr. Renee Boynton Jarrett. We are especially honored to have the family of Fire Marshal Christopher Tripp Zanetis here today. His mom, Sarah, his father, John, his boyfriend, Joan Pouget Abadi, and his uncle, Bill. As well as a number of other family members and close personal friends. Welcome to you all. I am honored to introduce our first speaker, Mayor Bill de Blasio.
We're gathered here at Engine 28, Ladder 11, to honor one of your own. What an outstanding man we honor. We lost Christopher Tripp Zanetis a year ago. But boy, we feel his presence still, and we will always, because we know a true hero when we see one. We know someone who lived life to the fullest when we see that kind of individual. Tripp certainly lived up to both of those definitions. Everything so many of us have learned in the year since we lost him confirms what an outstanding human being, what a joyful, committed, dutiful person, did so much good and moved everyone who met him. Our hearts are with his family, his parents, Sarah and John, Uncle Bill, his boyfriend, Jean. I want to say to all of you, what an extraordinary, warm, positive presence you have been, even in the midst of your own tragedy. You've shown everyone else love and support, but we're here to love and support you. Let's give them another warm round of applause. Tripp's huge extended second family, the FDNY, his huge extended family of the Air National Guard, all feel this loss very deeply, very personally. Anyone who even spent a day working with Tripp saw his energy, his devotion, his love of wearing that uniform and what it meant to him. 37 years in this earth, he touched countless lives with such energy, such passion. He did more on this earth in 37 years than many do in a much, much longer lifetime. I want to express my appreciation to everyone who's here, because remembering our heroes is so important, passing on their memory and their lesson. Everyone here is participating in that in a very powerful way. A special thank you to our Commissioner, Dan Nigro, our First Deputy Commissioner, Laura Kavanaugh, our Chief of Department, John Sudnick, all the leadership of the FDNY, and all the union leadership here as well. Everyone united in carrying on Tripp's memory. Now, Tripp is kind of a New York classic because many a time an outstanding young man or woman from the American heartland set their sights on New York City. And he came here and he fell in love with this place. And it loved him back. He fell in love with New York City. He loved our energy and our passion. He loved the life of this place. He loved it as a place where he knew he was respected and embraced. It was a place where he could live out his calling. New York City was everything for him. And he became one of the best amongst us. And when it comes to service, he epitomized the notion of service. It was not part of his life plan originally to wear a uniform, but then 9/11 happened. Tripp lived just 3 blocks away from the World Trade Center. And he was only a sophomore in college at NYU. When that tragedy occurred, he rushed to the site, not because he was a sworn officer, not because he had been trained, but because he wanted to serve, he wanted to help. He didn't care that there might be danger lurking. He wanted to do something to help his fellow human being, and he was there all that day and into the night helping the first responders in any way he could, and that experience convinced him that night that he had a sense of mission, that he needed to wear a uniform and protect others. And we know now that he could have made any choice. He had the brains and the ambition and the energy. He could have done anything. He could have certainly chosen any number of paths that would have brought him a lot more financial rewards. But he wasn't interested in financial rewards. I agree with the Reverend. He was a spiritual person. He had a sense of higher calling. And he knew that if you have a higher calling to serve humanity, there is no place better to do it than in the FDNY. 10 years, first as a firefighter, then as a fire marshal, recognized throughout for his professionalism and also his bravery. And that would have been enough to just stay on that path. We would have all said, what a good and honorable young man. No one would have questioned. But something inside Tripp said that he had to do still more. And so he joined the Air National Guard. And it's not surprising that someone like Tripp would want to be at the front despite the dangers where he could do the most good. He flew search and rescue missions in both Afghanistan and Iraq. He died as he lived, a hero in service to others. Very, very rare person who makes that choice over and over again to go farther and farther. But aren't we blessed that someone of that caliber was part of our city, was part of our fire department, was part of our military, and we honor him today. And he is unforgettable. We will, through this action today, keep his memory alive as an inspiration to so many who will come after. You know, Tripp comes from Indiana, and we salute Indiana for sending him to us, but he became a true New Yorker. He is now, as of today, with this plaque, a part of our permanent history. Like all the other great names in the history of New York, he takes his place in a pantheon that he richly deserves to be in. To his family, again, thank you. Thank you for having brought him up the right way. Thank you for giving him those values and that love. He is now part of all that we hold dear. One day, a young man or a young woman will walk by, they'll see that plaque, they'll read the story, and they'll be inspired to serve. And there'll be another Tripp and another and another. On behalf of 8.6 million New Yorkers, to the family and to all present, I say God bless you, and let's keep that beautiful memory alive. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor de Blasio. Next, we'll hear from Fire Commissioner Daniel Nigro.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Mayor, for those kind words. A year ago, we all learned the tragic news that a United States HH-60 Pave Hawk helicopter had crashed in western Iraq, claiming the lives of 7 airmen. Fire Marshal Trip Zanetis, who we honor and remember today, was killed in that crash as he bravely served his country. He lost his life alongside Staff Sergeant Deshaun Briggs, Staff Sergeant Carl Enos, Captain Andreas O'Keefe, Master Sergeant William Posh, and Captain Mark Weber, and his fellow FDNY member, Master Sergeant and FDNY Lieutenant Christopher Raguso. Tripp had served in the military for a decade, joining the 106th Rescue Wing of the Air National Guard in 2008, where he was assigned to the Wing's 101st Rescue Squadron. In this role, he had been deployed to both Iraq and Afghanistan, dangerous assignments where his courage and skills saved the lives of his fellow service members on multiple occasions. In fact, at one point in 2012, Tripp was part of an elite unit of all FDNY firefighters that deployed on more than 50 rescue missions, saving 100 lives in combat. At home, in his private life away from the FDNY, he used his legal expertise to help others, having graduated with honors from both NYU and Stanford Law School. And with us here in the FDNY, he bravely responded from this firehouse, Engine 28 and Ladder 11, protecting New Yorkers on the Lower East Side and throughout the surrounding neighborhoods on countless runs. His decision to become a New York City firefighter was made nearly 18 years ago as a young student volunteering to help first responders on and immediately after September 11th. Tripp saw a department that was hurting, and he decided he could help. That was clearly the theme of his life, always selflessly helping others. A year ago, together, we honored his wishes with a celebration of life for Tripp. That was an incredible sight to behold. It was not a funeral. It truly was a celebration of a remarkable life. Tripp touched so many in his too few years with us, in the military, in the field of law, in school, and of course here in the FDNY. To Tripp's family, you know what an amazing individual he was, and I want you to know that we know it too. We are better because he chose to be one of us, and the impact he made on so many lives is impossible to measure. We will hold him and his incredible legacy of service and bravery in our hearts forever. The Zanetis family will always have a home in the department, and especially here in this firehouse where he so bravely served. May God bless Fire Marshal Christopher Tripp Zanetis and the entire Zanetis family, and may God continue to bless the New York City Fire Department.
Thank you, Commissioner Nigro. Next, we'll hear from Chief of Department John Sudnick.
Good morning and welcome. What a terrific turnout here today. It is really terrific. I'd like to once again extend a very special welcome to the Zanetis family. Thank you for joining us today to pay tribute to Tripp. I'd also like to thank the officers and members of Engine 28 and Ladder 11. These ceremonies require a lot of hard work on your behalf, and the firehouse really looks great. I commend you for all your efforts. As you know, Tripp considered this firehouse his home, and all of you his family. It's really great to see you supporting the Zanetis family and each other here today. The month of March 2018 was a very difficult and heartbreaking time for our entire department. We had Tripp and his fellow service member, Lieutenant Chris Raguso, make the supreme sacrifice in the service of their country in Iraq. And then, just days later, Lieutenant Michael Davidson, lose his life in the line of duty at a fire in Harlem. Losing 3 of our members, 3 fine young men in their prime with so much promise in such a short period of time, is both tragic and unthinkable. Here we are a year later, and it's still so very difficult to make sense of it all. But when you see the tremendous strength and outpouring of love and support coming from the members of their respective firehouses, you can really understand why each of them chose the career paths they did. Although their call to service involved so much risk and so much danger, it gave them an opportunity to save lives while working side by side with people with so much compassion. So today is a very important day for us. In a department steeped in tradition and honor, a plaque dedication ceremony is perhaps one of our most solemn. It is at these events where we come together to acknowledge and celebrate a life of dedication and service. It is how we fulfill a promise to ensure the memory of our fallen member will live on for generations to come. When you walk into just about any New York City firehouse, you will notice a wall near the apparatus floor with the names of those who have sacrificed their lives in the performance of their duty. Over the course of our 154-year history, 1,151 of these brave souls swore an oath to protect others and gave their all in doing so. This staggering number includes 46 FDNY members serving our great nation overseas. In our department, we consider these heroes the bravest of the brave. Trip Zanetis is one of those heroes, and a hero he is in every sense of the word. We will always remember him as an extraordinary human being who dedicated his life and used his incredible talents to help others. Trip began his FDNY career right here as a young probie, and I think it's fair to say he was unlike any probie you ever had. Right from the start, you didn't just take him in, you embraced him. You embraced him because you saw a brilliant young man with infinite potential, and because he showed so much potential, you trained with him day and night. And because he was such a brilliant student with a tireless work ethic, he mastered every single lesson and every single drill put before him. And in very short order, you witnessed his transformation into an exceptional firefighter. I'm told he even helped out the officers here complete their fair share of reports. So it looks like he taught many of you a thing or two as well. In his way too short but remarkable life, Christopher Trip Zanetis had accomplished so much in so many different ways. He was a firefighter, a fire marshal, a lawyer, and an Air Force captain. He was a noble servant too, and a courageous protector of his city and his country. In the FDNY, he will always be remembered as one of our brightest, one of our bravest, and one of our best. Throughout his numerous endeavors, he saved so many lives and improved so many more. And the way he lived his life will continue to inspire us all. Rest assured, we will never forget him. I'd like to thank the members of Engine 28 and Ladder 11, as well as those fire marshals who worked with Trip, for joining us to honor him today. And once again, a very special thank you to the Zanetis family for being with us as we pay tribute to Trip. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Sudnick. And now we'll hear from UFA President Gerard Fitzgerald.
Good morning, everybody. First off, I'd like to recognize the members of the military that are here today, and then the rest of the military that's keeping us safe all around the world, protecting us. So if you could give me a hand in giving them a hand for what they do. Hello, and thank you for allowing me to join you here today on the occasion to share just a few words on behalf of 8,500 members of the UFA about the loss of an American hero, Fire Marshal, and Air National Guard pilot, Christopher Zanetis. Though each one is unique, this is a one-of-a-kind plaque dedication, not only because this outstanding individual dedicated his life to the Fire Department of New York and the residents within this city, not only because this Air Guard pilot went to extraordinary lengths to not only serve his city, but to serve his country and protect freedom in faraway lands, not only because Chris played an integral part in lobbying Albany to do the right thing and improve our stroke coverage and pension improvements for firefighters throughout New York City, but because a year ago, this plaque we erect today is not to solemnly memorialize his death, but to celebrate his life. Together in his honor, no matter the way that a firefighter has died, speaking to their loved ones, family and friends on days like today never gets easier. And sometimes we find it difficult to find the words that grant us solace during difficult times like this. Fire Marshal Zanetis, your service was admirable, your sacrifice was ultimate, and today a gracious country remembers a life lost too soon. Thank you very much. I'd like to invite Vincent Speciale and James Egan up to present the plaque to the family.
Good morning. If I could just take a moment just to read the plaque. In loving memory of Fire Marshal Christopher Zanetis, fire investigation, September 12, 2004 to March 15, 2018. An everlasting tribute for the ultimate act of service from the Uniformed Firefighters Association. Go over there for a photo.
Next, we will hear from United States Air Force Major Matthew Bender Forbes, Director of Operations, 101st Rescue Squadron, New York.
Thank you for having me today. First off, on behalf of the 101st and the 106th Rescue Wing, I'd like to present my deepest condolences and sympathy to the Zanetis family, as well as the rest of any Gold Star families that are here today. It's a sad moment that brings us all together, but at the same time, I'm extremely happy that we get to spend it together. I wouldn't have it any other way. To the FDNY, thank you very much for all of you welcoming us and bringing us out here today. It means a lot to see the rest of Tripp's family that we don't get to see every day out at Gabreski Air Base, and I know that he loved each and every one of you guys that he had the pleasure to serve with. I'm saddened today, but as well I feel privileged to be able to present some of the posthumously awarded awards that Tripp so definitely deserved based on his dedicated service to the country as well as to the state of New York. Tripp was a brilliant aviator. He was a tactician. He was a great friend. We all miss him dearly. So today, I'm here to present awards on behalf of New York State as well as on the behalf of the United States Air Force. The first set of awards that I'd like to present to the Zanetis family are on behalf of New York State. Tech Sergeant Valdez, if you can bring those up over to the Zanetis family. What we have today is Tripp was awarded the Conspicuous Service Cross from the state of New York, as well as the Medal for Merit. the Conspicuous Service Star. In addition, we also have today a flag that was flown over the New York State Capitol on 20 March 2018, so right after the crash, as well as a banner that was flown during the Little Neck Douglaston Memorial Day Parade on 28 May 2018. Thank you, Manny, for doing that so awkwardly. To be honest, I'm sure the Trip would have wanted it no other way than that. Next, we have a series of awards that come from the United States Air Force. So the next set is a series of very distinguished achievements that the Trip had in his career that sadly we're presenting here today. The first Air Force Achievement Medal, the first Oak Leaf Cluster for Trip. This was due to the amazing actions that he performed setting up a visit for Secretary James, something that I'm sure the base still remembers to this day. The next being a Meritorious Service Medal. This was for the actions that Trip conducted in Operation Enduring Freedom, as well as OIF, Operation New Dawn, as well as the actions that he performed while he was a guardsman, also out in California. So working the domestic home front, helping out with the issues that we see every day in the news with the California wildfires. Next was an Air Medal, both the second and third Oak Leaf Cluster that Trip earned. This one I'm sure would be probably the most near and dear to his heart, as well as to the rest of us in the rescue community, conducting more than 40 CASEVACs in Afghanistan, as well as the actions that he did for our country in both Kuwait as well as in Western Iraq. Finally, from the U.S. Air Force's CENTCOM, we have an Air Force Commendation Medal. For this was directly due to Trip's actions while he was stationed with us over in Operation Inherent Resolve, working both Western Iraq as well as Syria. Flew more than 38 sorties, total of 73 hours in that country. Supported multiple missions that resulted in the capture of more than 3 high-valued targets. Things that this country can't do enough to say thank you to the two of you for. So at this point, Tech Sergeant Valdez, if you can present those. Finally, I would like to take a moment to say thank you to Engine 28 and Ladder 11. We have a shadow box that includes a flag that, as members of the 101st, we flew during combat missions over Western Iraq and into Syria. We thank you guys for the support that you provide to any of our National Guardsmen, the guys that we required in order to get our job done, the citizen soldiers that probably leave you guys missing a couple of individuals at the firehouse, but ultimately allow us to perform the nation's objective. So at this point, I'd like to provide this to Engine 28 as well as Ladder 11, part of the Lower East Side. Once again, thank you very much for having us today. All I can say about the entire crew of Jolly 5-1 is everything that they did exhibited our motto, these things we do that others may live.
Thank you, Major Forbes. Next, we'll hear from Supervising Fire Marshal John Orlando from the Bureau of Fire Investigation.
Good afternoon. My name is John Orlando, and I am Supervising Fire Marshal in Citywide South Command, aka Brooklyn Base. I had the privilege and pleasure to work with newly appointed Fire Marshal Christopher Trip Zanetis when he was assigned to Brooklyn after training. Usually, we get a heads up about the new arrivals. We had heard Trip was smart, diligent, and eager to learn about the origin and cause of fires. He was, after all, the class valedictorian. More importantly, the guys who worked with him before said he was a great guy. Now, every firehouse has the same cast of characters. Trip was no ordinary firehouse character. Trip was a real intellectual. I was immediately impressed by Trip. As smart as he was, he did not possess any of that pompous snobbery intellectuals sometimes exude. I enjoyed working with Trip. We could talk about a range of topics in the car while driving to our jobs. I liked to challenge his thinking just to see how he would respond. However, we still had a job to do, and I was the senior marshal trying to show him the ropes. Trip was easy to teach because he asked the right questions and he always wanted to do the right thing. Trip and I also shared some common interests. We both liked to eat. I mean, with all the calories he was burning at CrossFit, he needed his food. I would take him to my favorite places some days, or ask Trip where he wanted to eat. Of course, Trip usually wanted to try out some new hipster joint in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. I knew Trip was not going to be a fire marshal for too long. I specifically remember a conversation where he told me that the Air National Guard had offered him training to be a fixed-wing pilot. The opportunities were endless for Trip, and his sense of public service and adventure was too great. Trip did love the fire department and being a firefighter and fire marshal. He was especially proud to be from Engine 28 and Ladder 11. It was his firehouse. Most of us know his story on September 11th and where he was and his school. And his mom, Sarah, would say that that is what made Chris become a fireman. It was only fitting that he was assigned to work in Manhattan at Engine 28 and Ladder 11, close to his alma mater. I want to thank Chief Fire Marshal Kane for giving me this opportunity to talk about Trip at his plaque dedication. On behalf of Chief Kane, Assistant Chief Fire Marshal Mike Durkin, the commanders, supervisors, and fire marshals of the Bureau of Fire Investigation, we want to thank the officers and members of Engine 28 and Ladder 11 for hosting this plaque dedication and giving Trip's plaque a permanent home here with all of your brothers who made the supreme sacrifice on September 11th. I know Trip would be honored because he loved you all. Finally, many of us wonder, where would Chris be today if tragedy hadn't struck last year? I believe, after finishing his tours of duty with the Air National Guard 106th Rescue Wing and fighting all the social injustices he would have been fighting with his law firm, Trip would have been right back here, sitting where you are, Commissioner Nigro, leading the greatest fire department in... That's right. Trip would have been leading the greatest fire department in the greatest city, in the greatest country in the world. God bless you, Trip. Rest in peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Fire Marshal Orlando. We'll now hear from retired Lieutenant Peter Sapienza of Engine 28.
On behalf of the officers and members of Ladder 11, Engine 28, 2nd Street, the House of Rules, I'd just like to thank everyone for showing up here today and spending some time with us while we honor Christopher Tripp Zanetis. On September 9th, 2004, Tripp, Zanetis, and Clifford Brown were getting assigned out of probie school to Engine 28. Now, this is not a knock on Firefighter Brown right there. A great guy, a smart guy, a brave guy. But he's an ex-cop, and you know how we feel about those guys. Can you imagine Firefighter Brown's mind when he read his assignment and he was going to Engine 28? I mean, he was going with the valedictorian, smartest guy in the class. I remember myself when I was assigned to my firehouse, I too went with another guy, and I hated the guy, and all he could do was make a loin of pork. But from day one, they supported each other, and the house was made better having both of them. They became best of friends, and together became CrossFit certified instructors 10 years before anyone knew what CrossFit was. A week or so after Tripp gets assigned to the company, I give a drill on ladder 6. Why would an engine officer give a drill on ladder 6? I have no idea, but I did. And after the drill, Tripp came up to my office very quietly, very respectfully, said, "You know, Lou, I think your scrub area figures are a little off." And I said, "Oh, really?" So I went to ladder 6 and looked it up, and of course, Tripp was 100% right. He brought this to my attention so respectfully and with no sense of bravado. I was sure this was nothing new to him. I could just see him in 3rd grade telling a teacher, "You know, you forgot to carry the decimal point, Mrs. Smith." I mean, the kid was class president in NYU. After reassembling the men and correcting myself, I wrote this down in my personal journal, which we all keep. Evelyn, don't be mad at me. Evelyn told me I have to clean up my language a little bit. I wrote this: when giving a drill with this new probie Tripp, try to know what the fuck you're talking about. and this kid could be trouble. But you know what? He never was. Not for a second. He knew where he stood in the pecking order of things, and he and Brown were great probies. After a few years in Engine 28 and Tripp getting absolutely no nozzle time, he crossed the floor to ladder 11. On one sunny Sunday day, we get a call for a fire in the projects off the FDR Drive with a trapped woman in the rear. I was the engine officer, and we had an out-of-house lieutenant in the truck. Tripp was assigned to CAM. As we got there, the door to the apartment was open and fire was lapping out into the hall. Tripp kneeled down, expelled his extinguisher into the apartment, tried to get under the fire to get to the rear bedroom doors, but he couldn't do it. It was too much. The fire was a little bit too much to do that. So after the engine stretched the line and knocked it down, the inside team scooted by, forced the bedroom door, and Tripp and the inside team came upon a conscious woman and handed her out to the waiting bucket of ladder 18. When we got into the street taking up, Division Commander McPartland gave us a big data boy, came over and said, "Lieutenant Sapienza," well, he called me Sap, said, "Sap, write the companies up for unit citation," which I did. And very disappointedly, we didn't get it. Neither company got the unit citation. Tripp was very, very upset. But the fire was not major, and the woman was not exposed to fire at the time, and when the inside team got to her, and sometime after that, I went away on vacation to Governor's Island for not too long a time, and Tripp tells me that he joined the Air Force Reserves, and that he took an aptitude test, and he decided that Apache helicopters or similar helicopters were what he's going to be trained on. And I was gone for maybe 2 months. I said, "You know, that's funny, Tripp, so did I. I joined and I took the same thing. And before you go on your missions, you'll see me." He said, "How am I going to see you, Lou?" I said, "I'll be cleaning your windshield." And by the way, when he did my reports, I bought him lunch. Okay, this is a little bit what we are as firemen. What you sign up for. I'm sure the same feelings go in the military. You sign up and you become what your life, and this is your normal life. You will experience bad days, you will experience up days, you will experience down days, you'll experience happy days, but you'll never experience a boring day. You do what you're called to do, you show up. You put one foot in front of the other, you get on that rig or that helicopter, and you head out into the unknown. You have no idea what awaits you, and you go out and do your job. No matter how dangerous a call or what you might think would be routine, we miss you, Chief Fahey, and you love it. There was no place you'd rather be. You know us firemen, we laugh louder than most, we walk bolder than most, we're stronger than most, hell, we eat better than everyone. But what we really do best is that we love. We love each other the hardest. And we love you, Trip. I was thinking of that unit citation the other day, how disappointed Trip was, and I started thinking about medals in general. In 1869, the Fire Department of New York established the James Gordon Bennett Medal. It is our Congressional Medal of Honor. It is awarded yearly for the most heroic act of bravery. To receive this medal, you have to rescue someone. While doing so, put yourself in extreme personal danger. Then I started to think about Tripp. Each time he boarded that helicopter, his sole mission was to rescue wounded soldiers from a battlefield, which he did many, many times, and sometimes under enemy fire. Matter of fact, one time Tripp's helicopter came under enemy fire, and to his rescue came Prince Harry. That's right, Prince Harry, who was flying a support and protect Apache helicopter. Harry's crew swooped in and eliminated the threat. So Tripp, don't sweat that little unit citation. In my eyes, you have a chest full of Gordon Bennetts. At this time, I'd like to read off, which was done already, but I'd like to do it again, the names of Tripp's military brothers that were on Tripp's mission. Major Anthony O'Keefe, Master Sergeant Chris Raguso, Technical Sergeant Sean Briggs, Captain Mark Weber, Master Sergeant Bill Posh, Staff Sergeant Carl Enos, and my brothers from Engine 28, Ladder 11, who Tripp will share a place of honor in our firehouse. Firefighter Patel, Lieutenant Quilty, Richard Kelly, Firefighter Eddie Day, Firefighter Matty Rogan, Firefighter John Heffernan, Firefighter Michael Camerano, Firefighter Roy Chelson, Firefighter Steve Schwartz. In Viking lore, and I know this to be true because a Viking king, Roy Chelson, told me this, personally when I was grieving after 9/11, and he said, the Vikings believe you die twice. Once when you physically die, and secondly, when your name is no longer spoken. John, Sarah, Tripp's family and friends, I make this vow to you. As long as there's a breath in my lungs, as long as there's a Second Street, the House of Rules, Chris, Tripp, Zanetis will live forever. Thank you.
Thank you, Pete. We'll now hear from Tripp's good friend and Stanford Law School classmate, Eric Silverberg.
Lieutenant Sapienza, you're a very tough act to follow. Although I will say I did have some swear words that I was going to take out, but now I think I'm going to keep them in. On behalf of Tripp's family, I want to thank everyone for being here. I want to thank the fire department for their incredible hospitality. I want to thank the dignitaries for being here today. Thank you. And I want to thank the department and the Air National Guard for your overwhelming presence. It is unbelievable. As someone who's never, doesn't come from a military background or I don't have any family that was in the fire department, I'm in awe. So Tripp and I went to law school, and we worked together at the same law firm. But I don't want to talk to you about what Tripp was like as a lawyer, and not because he wasn't good at it. He was actually very good, and he was destined to do great things, but because there's nothing that I could say about Tripp's accomplishments in the law that could possibly measure up to Tripp's record to his country and to his city. Or I'll put it another way, of Tripp's many heroics, passing first-year torts is not exactly something to marvel at. That's my only lawyer joke. So I wanted to talk to you about what Tripp was like as a friend. Just as Tripp approached everything else in his life, Tripp was the consummate friend. He was compassionate, he was thoughtful, he was generous, he was humble, he was funny, he was devoted, and he did all of these things to the most extreme, intense limits possible. But Tripp and I actually didn't become friends right away. See, when it was my fault. When I first met him, I was really scared of him. And it's not because he was absolutely shredded. What was it for? It was not because he was this intellectual snob. It wasn't any of that. I was intimidated by how impressive he was. You see, up to that point in my life, I really never had accomplished much of anything. And here next to me was this real-life version of Captain America. He was a firefighter, he was a crime fighter, he was an Air Force pilot, a CrossFit instructor, he could sing, he could dance, he could play piano. And the guy literally could do every single thing. And on top of all of that, he was smarter than me. I mean, I literally had nothing on him. I thought I have nothing to offer this guy, so there's no reason why he would want to be friends with me. And that was my first big mistake with Tripp, thinking that Tripp was like a lot of other people that you meet in this world, people who make decisions based on their own self-interest. Tripp wasn't like that. Tripp makes decisions based upon one guiding principle, and it was a non-negotiable guiding principle. He makes decisions based upon right and wrong. And so despite his being better than me at literally every single thing in my life, he and I became friends when we realized we were both going to work at the same law firm together. And our friendship was my privilege, truly. He taught me so much. And I'm not talking about teaching me how to survive law school, although he did that too. And actually, if you'll permit me to share one quick law school law-ish story, it won't be too wonky, I promise. We were going to a conference room before one of our finals at Stanford, and it being in Silicon Valley, they built all these rooms where you could draw on the walls, you can move the walls around, and so I was going there because I needed him to teach me corporations. And so I walk in, and he draws all over the walls, diagramming all the different ways that mergers can be done and how to challenge these mergers in court. And everything was color-coded, and the lines were literally perfect. They were the exact same length, width, and it was exactly straight. And it was like a computer made it. And I see the Air National Guards folks sort of chuckling, and you guys, maybe this is something, you know where I'm going. I said, Tripp, what the hell is this? And he said, well, this is how we do it in the Guard. Every line, the length of the line has meaning, the color has meaning. If there's a little squiggle on top, that has a distinct meaning. And so you really can't mess these things up. And I said, Tripp, Professor Milhab doesn't care if the lines have squiggles. I don't care. Just teach me what the hell this stuff is. But I mean, that really was Tripp. He was meticulous to the point of perfection. But he taught me more than just school. He taught me about being a good friend. He taught me to be kind for kindness' sake. He knew the names of every single person at the law school who served him coffee. He knew the names of every secretary on our floor at our law firm. He knew the names of the people who delivered the mail. He knew the names of the people who sat in the front to greet people. He was a guy, he didn't step on people below him to climb up the ladder. He reached down, lifted them up, and made everyone feel special. Tripp taught me the value of hard work. As you can imagine, studying for the bar with Tripp was a nightmare. He called me every third day to ruminate over these legal issues that I had never even contemplated, and to talk about the answers to essay questions that he wrote that I was never going to write. And this guy was a machine with this tremendous intellectual horsepower and an even bigger motor to boot. It was like being a Prius sitting next to a Ferrari. But it was impossible not to marvel at it, even if he just left you in the dust. Tripp taught me that a good meal is made better with your friends. So I used to go to work about 10 to 15 minutes before Tripp in the morning, not because I was, more rambunctious in the morning. Again, he woke up at 5:30 to do his CrossFit. I was lucky if I was up by 7:30, but okay, I got in 10 to 15 minutes before him. And so when I got in, I used to eat some breakfast. And every morning when he got in, he'd send me an email with nothing in the body, just the subject line. It said, "Breakfast, question mark." And if I didn't get back to him quickly enough, he would call my assistant and he'd say, "Is Erica there? I want to know if he wants to go to get breakfast." And sometimes, me focusing on my billable hours, I'd say, "Tripp, I have some work to do. I don't know if I can go with you." And he'd be very angry with me. But his anger never lasted too long because, as it's been said, Tripp, with all his working out, had the metabolism of a 12-year-old boy. And so he'd call again 2 hours later and say, "Oh, you want to go get brunch?" I don't eat brunch, but I said, "Yeah, okay, I'll go walk with you to get some brunch." So thankfully, there were always these opportunities to grab a meal with my friend, even if I didn't always take him up on it, which I regret. He taught me that a professional needs to dress well. Tripp's clothing was always pressed very nicely, never a wrinkle. But he had one problem. Unlike with, as a firefighter, a marshal, or an airman, he couldn't fit into the standard lawyer's uniform. I mean, the suits just don't really fit Tripp. And he had this massive neck. His shoulders were way too big. And this was really the problem with him. The thighs on his pants, he couldn't squeeze into it. And so he used to come into my office and say, "Eric, listen, I have a 42-inch chest, and I have 30-something thighs. You know how someone with my stature, how rare those dimensions are?" I said, "No, I have no idea. I buy my clothes off the rack." But Tripp did not buy his clothes off the rack. He needed to dress well. That was his solemn oath. And so he had a guy from Korea who came to the city twice a year, who sold fabric out of a hotel room in Midtown, where he got his clothing custom made. And it was Tripp liked the finer things in life, but also it was the price of doing something that he loved, which was being a lawyer. Tripp taught me the meaning of humility. When Tripp and I were third-year students, we had dinner one night, and he said to me, "Eric, I have to tell you, I'm pretty nervous about going to work at our law firm next year." And I said, "You nervous? The guy who flew an 8-hour rescue mission over the Pacific on Sunday, showed up to criminal procedure on Monday and knew the reading better than the professor? What could you possibly be nervous about?" And he said, "Well, I'm older than a lot of the first-year associates, and law isn't my first career, and I'm not sure if my peers will respect me for it." Now, this, of course, is a preposterous statement. And if there's one thing that Tripp commanded, it was respect. And I found it ironic because, as I just told you, I basically had the opposite reaction of Tripp when I first met him. I respected him to the point of reverence that I was afraid to talk to the guy. But I also found the statement to be shocking because if there's any guy who earned the right to walk into a law firm as a first-year associate, which are typically very rigid hierarchies, and walk in with a little bit of swagger, I thought, well, it's Tripp. I mean, you need to change out the paper just to print his resume. But Tripp was not a pretentious person. He was humble, he was gracious, and he celebrated everyone's accomplishments like they were truly marvelous, like they were truly his own. But the most important thing that Tripp taught me is something that his sister Britt actually said last year at his celebration of life, which is that when you're a star, you need to shine your light, not cast your shadow over people. My wife has reminded me of this statement a bunch of times over this past year, and I asked myself, what's my purpose in life? And is my purpose doing anything to help other people? And I know I said I wouldn't talk much about Tripp the lawyer, but Tripp's passing was a very real loss to our community of lawyers, too. There are a lot of lawyers in this city, but there aren't necessarily a lot of good ones. And there are even fewer whose mission it is to do good. And when Tripp said he was going to do something, you could take it to the bank. And Tripp wanted to fight for the little guy. He would have been the champion of the little guy. So I can never be as good a lawyer as Tripp, and I can never do the same amount of good as Tripp, but he taught me to try. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. We'll now hear from Tripp's dad, John.
Thank you, thank you. Normally, I would be speaking from some notes. I'm not today, which is a little scary because, as most of you know, I'm a lawyer, retired. And sometimes we have a tendency to talk a bit. But I'm going to make just a couple brief comments. There's so much that and even more that his mother could say about Tripp. She has a much better memory than me. But let me just touch on a couple things. The word inspiration comes up quite often and has today in regards to Tripp's relationship with other people. Let me tell you that as his father, Tripp inspired me to be better in everything that I do. My love for my wife, our relationship, 42 years. And quite frankly, someone that without which I would not be standing here today. Our two daughters, Ashley Britt and Angela Lynn, he gave me a lot of insight and inspiration. I had retired from law, went to work with a little startup company. They didn't really have a lot of respect for an old lawyer. But nevertheless, and I had my problems with that, of course, but Tripp, once again, would inspire me to take the higher road, to not go down a bad road, be critical, be nasty, but to take the higher road, to try to help and do whatever I could to further the business. I've recently been bought out, which is not a bad thing. It's a good thing. And I spoke to Dean Jarrett at NYU earlier, last year, I think, about what I wanted to do to help people. The last 25 years of my law practice was estate planning. So I worked with families and helped families. I want to continue that. I think that will be my way to honor Trip and to give back to so many good people. And having said that, there's no way that I can express how much Trip loved New York City. I cannot express how much Trip loved everybody in the FDNY. I cannot express how much he loved everyone in service with him in the squadron and that came to the squadron for special missions. He absolutely loved you all. And I mean that. I'm not just using love in a trite way here. He loved you. He was just full of love. That's all there is to it. And that's what he dedicated his life to, was sharing that and caring for others. And he's, like I said, he's been just a great inspiration. And I'll just close by saying, some of this is going to sound a little strange, I guess, but I talk to Trip every day, very quietly. But I talk to Trip every day, more than once. He's always with me. It's a wonderful feeling. I can't even explain that. I almost feel closer to Trip now than I did before the accident. And maybe, and I don't know all that, I don't understand it. But I just want to thank all of you for your service. Never have I ever seen the brotherhood that I've seen in the FDNY. And no disrespect meant to the military, because I'm just not that familiar with it, but I know it's true there too. But the brotherhood of the FDNY is absolutely astounding. And let me tell you that I carry that message to most everybody I talk to. So FDNY, people all around this country are hearing about you from my heart. The same with the 101st. Again, Trip never, ever wanted to go to battle to hurt anyone. Yeah, he carried a .45, big deal. Trip wanted to rescue people. And that's what he did. And that's what he was doing when he lost his life. It's hard to take. On the other hand, Trip has brought honor to the FDNY, to the Rescue Squadron 101, 106. He's also brought great honor to our family name, the Zanetis name. And of course, the Galbraith side of him too, you don't hear that. But the respect to our family that he has brought is just something really special. And he'll never be forgotten. And neither will any of you here. You know, you're our family now too. We intend to be out here as often as we can for FDNY activities, occasions. And the same with the squadron, our National Guard squadron, as often as we can. And let's love all you guys. We really do. We don't say that lightly. We mean that. And I want to thank you again for being friends with Trip, all of you, supporting him and now showing the respect that you have. Just thank you very much. And know that you're in our hearts every day. We think about you all the time. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, John. We will now commence with the dedication of the plaque.
Mr. Mayor.
Please unveil the plaque. The plaque reads, dedicated to the memory of Fire Marshal Christopher T. Zanetis, Bureau of Fire Investigation, Citywide South, who made the supreme sacrifice while serving his country in Operation Inherent Resolve as a major with the 101st Rescue Squadron in Al-Assad, Iraq, March 15, 2008.
Detail, uncle.
At this point, we bless the plaque. But for Tripp, we have heard that he was a God with us, a saint. We have heard that no one could be as smart or as buff or as handsome or as good a friend as Tripp Zanetis. And we have heard about what a huge loss has been left for us. There is no way any one of us will be able to go and fill that loss. But for tomorrow, and for the day after that, and for the day after that, Tripp would want us to find ways to live out his legacy. And that's what this plaque is about. And so today, we bless this plaque with our own commitment. Our own commitment to study harder. Study, guys. Study harder, okay? Our own commitments to do another rep at CrossFit when we can't go on anymore. To be that much more loving, kind, patient, generous. To eat just one more meal with a friend. That we make that solemn commitment today for Tripp, for his family, for his legacy. So that every time we see this plaque, we walk a little taller, a little more at peace with ourselves, a little more proud of our city. And we know that generations forever will do the same because they will see him living on in each of us. Amen.
Detail, Rico. Everyone please rise. Detail, and salute. Take two.
Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the New York City Mayor, Fire Commissioner, the Chief of Department, and other members of the dais, we want to thank you for attending today's very special ceremony. What a terrific show of love for our fallen brother, Fire Marshal Christopher Zanetis. Rest assured, none of us will ever forget him. This concludes the plaque dedication ceremony. We'd like to invite everyone present to join us at the Coalition at the Hotel Chantel 92 Ludlow. Thank you again, and have a nice day.